So thank you all for coming. To myself, why are we having this lecture, shir and lecture? Just to give the layout of the evening, we're going to start with shir dealing with the Torah aspect of Halachic wills. It will take about somewhere between half an hour to 40 minutes, and then we will have a second part of the legal issues regarding wills by Advocate Yaakov Greif from Koven and Greif Law Offices. And thanks also to Pinchas Koven for attending and for the cooperation we have for the past few months. And then afterwards we will take questions at the end. I'm sure there will probably be some questions about the issues that are going to come up. So we'll take questions at the end, because probably some of the things definitely that you'll have in mind to ask will come up later or maybe before. And once the lecture is finished, you can present your questions and we'll try to answer them to as best as we can. So why am I here tonight, and why are we all here tonight? So I'll tell you personally, sitting quite a few years, 8 years in the Kol Dayanut, studying monetary law, Dinei Mamonot. I knew there's probably no chance you're going to get appointed as a Dayan in Israel. A lot of political issues and things like that. So I sat and learned to enjoy myself. Just enjoy the learning, seriously. Best years of my life, probably. And you sit another few years as a Dayan and a Beit Din in monetary law. And a case comes up here, a case comes up there. And I said to myself, what could I do with all the knowledge that you acquire over the years? And the answers came from phone calls I started getting. And I get a phone call from a person who tells me I went to monetary Beit Din and I ended up getting this and this verdict. And could you take a look at it? I'm not happy with it. What could I do? I say, okay, come over to my house. We'll have a meeting. Let's see what we can do. And I look at it, and I see the person didn't understand where he was going. He didn't understand what would be relevant claims in the case. He doesn't understand how Dinei Mamonot in a Din Torah works versus a regular court of law. And if he just had that advice beforehand, before he actually went to Din Torah, he would have been in a totally different place. And I said to myself, people don't know what's going on. Someone else calls me some months later, this is quite a few years ago, and he was fired from his job. And he says to me, I didn't get severance, I didn't get paid a few salaries, and I want to sue my employer in Din Torah. I want to go according to Halacha, I want to sue him in a Din Torah. What could I do? I said to him, I looked at it, I said, do you have a contract? Oh, I didn't realize I have to have a contract. It's not done halachically. He doesn't realize that different halachot regarding the regular law and halachic law. And in a situation where if he would have gotten advice originally when he was thinking of signing the contract at the beginning, he would have put himself in a totally different place and would have solved a lot of problems in the future. And probably one of the worst phone calls I got was 3 or 4 years ago. I get a call from a woman, someone totally in a different place in the country, not from Beit Shemesh. And she tells me a story. She tells me that her mother died, and her father died a few years before. And she has 2 brothers. And they left an estate, a house and some property. And the brothers will not give her any share. They said, according to Din Torah, girls don't deserve to inherit. I'm not considered heirs according to Halacha, and we need the money. You're doing well, and we need the money to marry off our daughters, whenever it is. We need to buy them apartments. We won't get a shidduch, blah blah blah. And she asked me, what can I do? And I asked her, did your parents' did your mother write a will? She says to me, nope. So I said to her, there's not much I can do. I mean, there are some Batei Din that will try and convince and try and put a bit of pressure on the sons to give a portion to the daughter. But if you go and sue in Din Torah, you can't force it, because according to Din Torah, the girls are not heirs, and they don't receive if there's boys. And if you do go to a secular court of law and demand what you deserve according to the law, that's gezet. There's not much I can do for you. I was just thinking to myself, how many other people are there like this who went through different types of situations, family disputes or things like that, and there was nobody there to give them advice. They didn't realize what the situation is, or what the outcome could be, and they end up in situations which are, in the good case, monetary problems, and the worst case, family problems. And these are things, I said to myself, you consider an abatement as a dayan, but you're only getting the cases that are actually coming to you. You can maybe get a phone call here or there, but people, and we should know what the situation is. We should get as much advice as possible ahead of time and try and minimize the possibility of problems afterwards. Okay, so this in general about Jewish monetary law, what we call dinei mamonot. So why am I starting kadat v'kadin and starting with dafka with halachic wills and not with other basin issues, which are also important, as I mentioned, or halachic contracts or other things like that, which could be very relevant. Sad to say, and some of us know it from close family. There's only one thing sure in life, that we're not going to get past manifestation probably, and it's something that's relevant to each and every one of us, and therefore, if I want to talk about halacha and mamonot, so the first topic I actually think that should come up is halachic wills, because it's something that's relevant to everyone. There could be business partnerships that are relevant for some of us. There could be halachic sales of real estate contracts, if it's rental or sales, that could be relevant to other people. There could be din Torahs or din Torah disputes, monetary disputes, that could be relevant to other people, but wills is something that's relevant to each and every one of us. B'ezrat Hashem, later the better, and maybe it's a segula if you take care of things and plan them out. So just put it in the drawer. Just like when I tell couples who come for I do their chuppah, and I have to get to the hard part. I have to explain to them what a ketubah is. It's kind of an insurance policy for the worst case scenario. And I say to them, it's a segula. You write a ketubah, you put it in the drawer, and you hope you never have to use it. And B'ezrat Hashem, it will create stability for your married life, B'ezrat Hashem. And also this type of thing, the will, is also something that it's going to be used one day, but we hope the later the better. But since we're living in times, and l'tzarenu, we see these things happening, yaminu mismol, day by day. You don't know what's going to happen the next day, and you want to think about the future. Now, writing wills is something that most of us did not do, or most of us don't really feel like doing. And that's something we push off, we put it at the bottom of the list, and usually it's one of the last things it's important, it's this, it's that, but we usually push it off, and people don't write wills. And I reckon if I probably do a poll here, probably most of the people sitting in this room, men and women, did not write wills yet. And why don't we do it? First of all, because it looks far. Baruch Hashem. And it's a healthy feeling to live our life and not feel every day think morbid feelings and think about the worst case scenarios every second, or else a person can never enjoy life and do what he likes doing or think or plan for the future. But it looks far, it looks impractical. What's going to come out of it? And we prefer to push off things that look far from us. And there's a famous Hebrew saying that says, "Al titche lemachar, ma shtaychol lidchot lemachrotaim." Don't push off to tomorrow, which you can push off later on. So we push it off as much as possible. That's one reason. So it looks far. We don't want to deal with it. Second thing is, it's uncomfortable to deal with it, because death is probably something that's scary to think about. It's not a simple thing to think about. And writing a will makes us actually sit and think seriously about things which we usually try and push aside and don't want to think about. And therefore, naturally, even without us thinking about it, or maybe especially without thinking about it, it goes to the bottom of the list, and we always say we need to do it, but we actually never get to do it. And that's what Happens a lot of times. So, what is the importance of writing a will? Why is it important to write a will in general? So, if each and every one of us, we think for ourselves, what is the most important things we invest in our life? What do we spend most of our time on in life? What do we work the hardest? What is most important to us? I reckon that probably all of us would answer probably that the family is the most important thing we have in life and we invest in. And we make so much effort to have a family. And the assets and the estate and all the wealth that a person tries to bring together is something that supports that. And that is the second thing. You may not say it's the most important thing you have in life, because obviously it's not the most important thing in life. Like there's a spiritual thing, there's living the life itself, and a lot of other important things. But if you think what do you spend most of your time on, it's probably these two things. It's family and financial issues. And going to work and making money and providing. And you take these two things, especially family, you think if you invested so much in, you don't want, you put so much thought, so much time, so much effort, we may want to take just a bit of thought and a bit of time and a bit of effort to think how we make sure that they stay on after us. And that these things that we built up, especially family, you want it to be sustained for generations to come and to flourish and to expand and to be united. That's one thing. And also you build a certain amount of wealth, hopefully. And you don't want it to go to loss once we're not around. You want it to at least to go and to continue to be productive for things that we really believe that it should be for. Especially family or other important things. And that's one of the reasons you want to write a will. We all know Esav comes into Yaakov and says, "Ina anochi olech lamut, v'lama ze li bechorah." What do I care? I'm going to die anyway. What do I need the bechorah? All I need is the moment, here and now. Or as they say in the modern English, YOLO. You only live once, and that's all they care about. But in Judaism especially, we believe in planting for generations and investing in generations, and a will is one of these tools that can actually invest not only for now, but invest for the future. Is that what we daven at the end of Uval Tzion every morning? Leman lo niga larik, velo neled labe'ala. We should not work in vain. And that is one of the things we want to ensure, that we're not working in vain. It doesn't go for nothing. Okay, so we care about the future, we care about our family, we care about the monetary assets we have. What do I need to write a will for? I mean, there's inheritance law, it exists. And even if you don't write a will, there's a way that it'll be divided by law. There's a default. Why do I need to, it's a lo naim, as we said, it's uncomfortable to deal with these things. Why do I need to deal with this? Okay, there's a default. The law set a certain default. Who gets what? After we get to Me'ah Esrim. So, what do I need to start getting involved in this? Why do I have to do all these uncomfortable things? Why do I need to start maybe investing some money in it, or investing time in it, or bother even thinking about it? The famous Hebrew saying, "Acharei mabud." Yeah, but even if it's not, why should it be a mabud? There's a law that says exactly who gets what after a person passes away. So why do I need to be active in it? I could just be passive and wait for things to solve themselves up. So, one important thing to realize is that we have to realize what is the default according to the Israeli law. And obviously, more legal aspects Advocate Yaakov Greif will address later. But what is the default according to Israeli law? According to Israeli law, when a person gets to Me'ah Esrim, so his spouse gets half of his estate, and the children, all the children, get the other half of the estate. That's the default. Now, if I probably do a poll here, okay, between all the people sitting here, is that what you would want to happen? The answer, and the lawyers will assure you, out of their dozens of years of experience, of what people write in wills, absolutely nobody, or almost nobody, wants this to be the result. So you ask yourself, why should I write a will? Because I don't think that this default that the state of Israel stated as what is going to happen when a person gets the matter and asks him, I don't want this. Some people will want everything to go to their children and the children to provide for the spouse. Or most of the people will want everything to go to the spouse. Nobody wants to start and divide it half-half, except for certain extreme cases, maybe second marriage, maybe certain different children from different parents. But in general, most of the people don't want it. So if you don't actively write a will, the result is going to be a result that you most probably do not want. That's going to happen. So it's not practical not to write a will. It's against your will not to write a will. It's not only not writing a will, it's going to be against your will. That's what's going to happen if you don't actively write a will. Now you can ask, well, if nobody wants this type of solution, just in parentheses, not just to make the state of Israel look stupid, why would they institute such a law that half goes to the spouse, half goes to the children, if nobody actually wants that? So I guess, and this is my guess, I didn't read the explanation to the law, but I guess one of the reasons that the state of Israel put this in is because it's the fair default. In other words, there are some cases where you don't want to give everything to the spouse automatically if a person did not write a will, because in some cases the spouse may wrongfully just keep everything for himself or remarry, and nothing will be left for the kids. So you can't be a default situation where the kid's not going to get anything. On the other hand, you can't give the kids everything, the children everything in default, because also the spouse deserves something, and a lot of people want the spouse to have something. So the law just did kind of a pshara, it did a compromise. Okay, so the default is a compromise. It's fair that the spouse should get something. It's fair that the children should get something, and that's a default. But it's a default that's asking for you, or begging for each and every one of you to write a will. Okay? It's just kind of a fair default, because the person did not express what he really wants. So that is just to understand where it comes from. But at the end of the day, by not actively writing a will, you're leaving the situation to be an impractical, and saying that would for most of you be against your will. Another thing is that if you don't write a will, not that I'll assure you that if you write a will, it'll solve every problem. But if you don't write a will, especially if you don't explain what you want, or what the idea is, or what you want your estate to fulfill after you're done, or what are the things you believe in, or what are the reasoning you're giving one or the other, even if you're not changing much from the default in the law, there's a large chance that there's going to be a lot of arguments. I've seen people with great midot, and I sat in Basin for a few years, and I saw Rosh Yeshivas, and I've seen people, great people, and when it comes to money, I don't know, something, and money just turns sometimes, could drive people, change them totally. And I regret. If you don't explain, and you don't allocate properly and in an organized way to the heirs, or to people you think should be receiving it, there's a large chance that there's going to be a lot of dispute in the family. And I guess that for all of us, that's the worst thing we would want to happen, is that our families would start fighting with each other. When there's nothing there, there's, as they say in general, there's no such thing as a vacuum. Every space gets filled with something, and if you don't put anything, do anything positively, it's going to be filled with something else. So sometimes we get great families where everybody gets along together and all that. If everybody gets along together, you really don't need to do anything. But you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen in the future, and you want to try to ensure that you don't have disputes. So try and minimize that by actually writing out what you want to happen, and also explain the reasoning behind it. So that is the second reason you want to go. First of all, because the legal default is impractical. Second reason is to prevent as much as possible disputes within the family. That is on a general basis. I could have given this up till now to anyone, anywhere, religious, non-religious. But we as Shomrei Torah, people who keep the Torah, religious people, there's another issue. Because there is a gigantic difference. We're living in Israel, in a Jewish state, but Litzarenu, even though Herzl tried to initiate Jewish inheritance laws in the early 50s, but his opinion was not accepted, not by the state, but by Rabbanim, who opposed his propositions and his suggestions for a Jewish inheritance law, which would comply also with the ideas, with modern way of ideas of inheritance and halacha. It was opposed mainly by Rabbanim, who disagreed with his opinions. And so the Jewish law, the Israeli law, is totally different than halacha. And here we come to a different problem. We as religious people, how in a case where there's no will, if we don't write a will, how is the estate going to be divided? By halacha or by the Israeli law? And just to give you a few examples, a few differences between the Israeli law and halacha. There are four main differences, which could make a huge difference in the inheritance, how to divide up an inheritance. Number one is the Yerusha of the Bechor. According to Din Torah, a firstborn son receives a double amount than any other heir, any other son. A double amount. Pishnai, as stated in Parashat Ki Tetzeh. According to Israeli law, there's every child receives exactly the same amount. So you can have very big differences. I mean, if you have a lot of children, it probably wouldn't be that much of a difference. But if you have 3, 4, 5 children, it could still a lot of money. And if you're talking about an estate, you're talking about even an apartment that's worth a few million shekels, or 2 apartments, or whatever it is, you're talking about a lot of money. You're talking about differences of hundreds of thousands of shekels, at least. Okay, and the difference in inheritance. And that's already an opening for a problem. Second difference, which is very famous. Daughters, girls. According to Din Torah, only the boys, let's say there's 2 boys and 3 daughters. So the boys get all the estates, and the girls do not get anything according to Halacha. Whereas according to the Israeli law, children are equal. Women's rights, everything is equal. So instead of inheritance dividing into 2, according to Din Torah, it divides into 5. Into 5 different parts. Huge difference. Adopted child. According to Israeli law, an adopted child, under certain circumstances, is considered a legitimate heir. It's considered like a biological child, according to Israeli law. According to Halacha, only biological children receive a part of the inheritance. And the fourth difference is the inheritance of the spouse. According to Din Torah, there's a difference between the husband and the wife. Again, between men and women. If the wife gets the man of Esrim before the husband, so the husband inherits his wife. Whereas in the contrary, in the opposite situation, if the husband gets the man of Esrim before the wife, so what happens is that the wife does not get anything. The children get all the estate, and they have to provide for the wife, but she doesn't inherit the estate. So that's a total difference. According to Israeli law, as I stated before, the spouse automatically inherits half of the estate. So in that case, we have a total difference between the Israeli law and halacha. Now, just to, in parentheses here, just to get a better understanding of the halacha, it may seem, what sense does it make that you have 2 boys and 3 daughters, and the boys receive inheritance and the daughters don't get anything? What sense does this make? Why does the firstborn get twice as much as any other boy? So just explain it a bit where it comes from. And certain things are less relevant today, and that's why a lot of people do not want to do this, and we write wills that are different than the Torah law, is that the patriarchal society, if you think of it, the firstborn son was the person who really takes care of all the parnasah after the father dies. Okay. My father, Shlita, his father died when he was a very young boy. He was the oldest son. And he was 14 years old. All his brothers and sisters were younger children. He was 14 years old. His father died. What do you do? So my father went to work. He had to provide for the whole family. That's what he did. So in olden days, thank you very much. In olden days, that would be the situation all the time. So you get a certain percentage. It's like you have to have a director who gets a certain percentage of the company, who has to be able to control it. So the Bechor would get twice as much as anybody else in order to be able to provide for all the rest. That would be the sense. Today, it's a bit less relevant, this issue. The girls. It's not that the girls did not get anything in the olden days. It's true, they did not inherit from the estate when the parent died. But they got a portion of money when they got married. In those days, the boys stayed living in the house with the parents, and the girls moved out. They got married and moved out. So when the girl got married, she did not have to wait till Mea V'Esher of her parents. She got an adunya. She got a nice sum, a nice amount of money when she got married, and that's when she got it, beforehand. So what was left, so she got it during the life of the parents, when she got married, and later on, when the parent died, so she did not receive. That was the way it worked in those days. And the not married girls, if there were girls who were not married in those days, when the parent died, so there's a takana of Chazal mentioned in the Masechet Ketubot called Isur Nechasim, whereas a portion of a tenth of the estate had to go for not married girls in order to provide for them and make sure they can marry properly and they're provided for. So that is what sense it made in those days, the Torah. But today things are different. Today it doesn't make a difference. Everybody moves out, the boys move out, the girls move out, and things have changed. And we a lot of times want to have a different system than the Torah allocated, stated in the Parshiyah of Yerusha. So what do we do? So what is going to happen? So I asked, why do we write a will? So you don't want the Israeli law to come the default, which is impractical. You don't want to leave a vacuum which would cause a dispute between people in the family chassash. But here, there's even more of a problem. Because what happens when there's a difference between the Israeli law and the halakha? Just like that woman I told you at the beginning of the lecture who called me. Said, I want to receive a portion. But my brothers won't give me it. And what happens is, if we don't take care of things in time, what happens is afterwards, that in this situation where money is involved, there's nothing you can do. Everybody tries to maximize his way of receiving as much as possible. And there's crazy cases and terrible cases of one side of the family going to a regular secular court, and the other side of the family going to Din Torah. And each side trying to maximize the amount of money he's going to get, because this one says, I want to go according to the Israeli law, because I want to get my part. And another one says, no, I prefer to divide according to halacha, and you're going against halacha. So in the good case, those who go to the secular court to try and receive what they deserve according to Israeli law are violating the Isra of Gezel. That's in the good case. So you're over Isurim of the Torah. In the worst case is that, like I mentioned before, people in the family stop talking to each other. And I've seen these things happen. I think in farther relatives of mine, extended family, I've seen people who over money, brothers of mine, don't talk to each other. These are terrible situations. And as religious people, we have to take this into account. So even if a non-religious person would say, okay, I don't care that the Israeli law is not practical, just leave it to be. Here we have a situation where the differences between halacha and the Israeli law, or any other state law, and even if you'd be living in Chutz La'aretz, create a situation where if you don't write a will and make sure it could be enforced halachically, you're most likely putting your family in a situation where they have to be absolute angel or malachim to get along together. and you don't want to take that chance. Okay, so I'm going to write a will. I don't want to take these chances that chas v'shalom there will be disputes. I don't want to take the chance that people are going to be over an Isser Gezel, violating the Isser of Gezel by taking money that they don't deserve according to halacha. So I'll write a will. The thing is that why do I need to write a halachic will? What's about that? What's the point of writing a halachic will? Let me just write a will, and that's it. So one issue, it's not the biggest issue, but one issue is first of all what the Gemara calls aburi achsanta, isur ha'avarat nachala. There are certain situations where a person may want to give certain heirs part of the estate, and certain heirs not given, because he may have given them in his life. You may have bought some apartments for some of your children, and you say, well, after I get them out of Esrim, I don't think they need it. Or they're doing absolutely well. They don't need my money. I want to give it to the children who don't have anything, who are not doing so well. You may be depriving certain heirs out of what they deserve according to Din Torah. That's called Isur Ha'avarat Nachalas. You have to make sure that you're not violating that Isur. There are certain parameters to this Isur. And in every will, according to certain poskim, we put in that a certain amount of the money, at least a minimal amount, is divided according to Din Torah. That is one halachic solution to solve this problem of ibure achsanta, of taking part of the estate that one heir deserves and giving it to someone else. That is one thing. But the main problem, the biggest problem with a regular will, which does not have a proper halachic supplement to it, is the issue of ein kinyan lachar mitat. What does this concept of ein kinyan lachar mitat mean? And here we have to understand a very, very big difference. Ein kinyan lachar mitat. You can't do any monetary transaction after you're not around. And this is a halachic concept which is totally different than regular Western law usually understands. When does inheritance come into effect? The inheritance comes into effect exactly when a person dies. When a person gets to Neve Esrim, the inheritance laws of the Torah come into effect. Now, if you, for one reason or other, you say, well, I want my girls to receive part of the estate. I don't think the Bechor needs to get a double amount. Or I want my spouse to get all this estate, and only afterwards I want it to go to my children. Because I trust my spouse that is going to run it properly, and I want my spouse to be able to provide for the children. Or to be able to decide what to do with all the money, or the apartment, or to be able to own the apartment that we lived in all our life, or whatever it is. So you're going to write that. You're going to write a will. Very nice that you wrote a will. So say, I want this, this. It's very nice that you want it. But you ask for it to happen. But once you're after Neve Esrim, and you want to implement this has absolutely no halachic significance. Why? Because once you're not around, according to halacha, you don't have a say. So you can say that you want things to happen after you're not around, but it's only what you asked for. It's only what you said. But you didn't create anything. According to halacha, you have to make sure things are done during your life. You have to make things happen during your life. Ein kinyan lachar mitah. No transaction can be done after you're not around, because you're not a legal entity after you're not around. So once we arrive at Neve Esrim, so the default is that the Torah law goes into effect, and there's no way, if you wrote a regular will it make a difference, or it doesn't have any legal, it doesn't bind in any legal way, because it wasn't done in a way that's considered halachically as a transaction while you're alive. So the fact that you wrote a will, if it's not halachic, according to most poskim, doesn't have any Torah legal effect. So some people will ask me, well, Rav Moshe Feinstein, and I won't go into his whole details of the psak, poskins that a regular legal will does have authority, has halachic authority too, and he goes into his own explanations. As far as I know, he's the only one, or one of the only ones who poskins that way. You say, well, I want to rely on Rav Moshe Feinstein. that's very nice. But first of all, the ones in your family which will try and dispute you, they'll say they disagree with Moshe Feinstein. Then what you do? And let's say you arrive in a Beit Din, and this is what I tell a lot of times people. If it's got to do with a question that got to between you and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, is this kosher or not kosher? Is this Chilul Shabbat or not Chilul Shabbat? So you go ask your Rav. And even if your Rav is the only one who paskins a certain way, that's okay. You ask your Rav, he told you this is okay to do on Shabbos, it's okay to eat this thing, or whatever it is. When you get to Meves, you go to Beit Din Shalmana, you get to Gan Eden B'ezrat Hashem, and the Beit Din Shalmana say, why did you eat this thing? I said, well, I asked my Rav, he said it was okay. Green pass, no problem. But that's been Adan Makom. But if you have to implement a document or probate a will, and you're going to take it to a Beis Din, and the Beis Din is going to have to rule if it's halachically binding or not, you're dependent on the Beis Din. And I have news for you. Most of the Batei Din will not rule like Moshe Feinstein. And if a person will sue in the Beis Din and wants to go and go into Torah, he won't go to secular court. He say, I don't want to violate this Gezel. I'm going to give the Torah. I'm just going to claim in the Beis Din. I deserve part of the estate because when Moshe Feinstein passing that this will is good. Well, the Beis Din may very well say that it's very nice. But according to most poskim, it's not good. Because you didn't have a halachic supplement. En kinyan lacham mitah. So I can't give you what is written in the will. It doesn't have any halachic authority. That's the situation you may end up. So you have to think from a practical perspective. Not only are the poskim will say it's okay. You have to think, is this practical to use the will in this type of way? So you have to, if you want to have a proper halachic will, you have to have a halachic will that according to a large majority of the poskim, or according to as many poskim as possible, and have it drafted in a way that covers most of the situations, that you leave the least loopholes there to be able to not implement what's written there. That's what you want. You don't want to rely on a minority opinion. Okay, so that is really why you need halachic will. So we said en kinyan lachar mitah. So we need halacha. How are we gonna overcome this issue? How does it work? Okay, if I write in the will that I want this and this to happen, I want the house to go to child number 1, and the second house to go to child number 2, and I want the car to go to this one, the candlesticks to go to that one, and whatever, and this shas to go to the 5th child. How is it going to be implemented? As I said, in kinyan lachar mitah, and the fact that I wrote it doesn't really have any halachic authority. It doesn't work. So how do we actually overcome this issue? So the first idea and the first principle that is brought down is matana mechaim. In other words, instead of writing that I'm asking that after I die this is going to go here and there, I actually create a transaction now, when I write the will. And the way it works is that I'm actually doing a matnat bari. I'm not using inheritance, but just like when I'm alive, I can give presents to whoever I want while I'm alive. Right? I can distribute my assets or my estate the way I want while I'm still around. I can give to whoever, presents or whatever. So the will, what I do is I put it into effect before I get to marriage. That means the halachic supplement will write that these all the things I own are given to the following people. If it's the children, or it's my spouse, or it's a tzedakah, or whoever it is, or this thing to this one and this one to that one, is given. Guf ma'ayom ve'pirot lachar mitah. To be given, that means it's given from today. The body of it is given today, but the benefits of it are only going to be, okay, after I die. That means I actually, in essence, I gave it already now. But what happens if I change my mind? If I gave everything now already, and I distribute everything now, What's going to happen if I change my mind? Let's say in 5 years' time, I see one of my children is doing really well, another child is not doing well, and I want to change it. I want to give this one more, this one less. This one I thought was going to get married, and she didn't, and whatever. Things change in life. Okay? Well, 40, 60, 70, 80 is still, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years to live. Plenty of time. Things could change in life. What happens if things change? So I put a condition in this matana. I say it's a matana mechaim. Im lo echzor bi, if I don't change my mind by writing another will. That means if you want to change your mind in 5, 10, 20 years' time, and you think that you want to do something different, so you can write another will, and therefore the original matana was not given at all because you only gave it on condition that you don't change, you don't write another later will. So if you write another will, it will be also drafted logically the same way, and it nullifies the previous one. So that way, you created a system which put things into action right now, and if you change your mind, you can still have the opening that you can change your mind later on. So that is the first solution. Matana mechai. Sounds great, but it's not good enough. Why? Because there is a rule in halacha, ein adam makneh davar shelo lo ba la'olam. Today I own a small car, small apartment. My business is developing. Who knows? In 20 years' time, I may have much more assets. I may move to a much bigger house. I may own another car. I'll sell this car, buy another one. How long do cars last nowadays? Right? It's not worth anyway investing in a car. So don't invest in cars. I may move to a different place, a bigger house, a different city. So it's very nice that I gave this house, if I don't change my mind, to someone else, to the people written in the will. But if I sold this house, which means I did change my mind, right, and I bought another house 10 years later, that was not put in the will. I did not do any transaction on that. I cannot write now that I'm giving things that are not in my possession at all, or maybe not even exist. Who knows? Maybe I'm going to buy an apartment in Ramat Beit Shemesh Zion. You know? Doesn't exist yet. Nobody even thought of it yet. You never know. How is it going to work? I can only write a matana on things I actually own. Second problem with matana mechana. It's good, very good for people who are around. But let's say today I have 4 children. And in 5 years' time I'm going to have 5 children. So I can give presents today, I can give things today, allocate them to people that are in this world, who exist. I cannot give it to people who do not. I cannot distribute it to people who are not in this world yet. Maybe grandchildren, maybe you want to give the candlesticks to the granddaughter who's going to be born in 10 years' time. You can't do that. She's not around yet. So, Matana Mechaim is only part of the solution. The second part of the solution is what we call a shtar chatzi zachar, which may seem like a weird term. Okay? A document of a half a male. Whatever that means. Shtar chatzi zachar. Okay? That's the term. Okay? For those who feel it's not fair to be called shtar chatzi zachar, there are more updated terms as shtar zachar shalem. Okay? And I'll explain what it means. What is the shtar chatzi zachar? To understand, as I said earlier, the concept of shtar chatzi zachar is based on obligating yourself to pay a certain amount of money. It's creating an artificial way of implementing what you want to have. How does this work? As I said in olden days, I mean, in certain communities till this very day, when a daughter gets married, you give her a very large sum. Okay. Some communities, the whole shidduch is dependent on that. But you give the daughter a large sum of money. Now, how do you give her a large sum of money? If you have a large sum of money, very nice. But what if you don't? What if you don't have a large sum of money? So, the person marrying the daughter, whatever it was, 500, 600 years ago, would say, well, the family of the Chatan would say, I want to make sure, you're giving me something significant. I want part of this estate. So what would the person do? The father of the couple. He would write a shtar. The shtar would be a shtar that obligates him to his daughter a very large sum of money. He says it's called a hoda'ah, odita. In halacha, if you admit to owing a certain amount of money, that admitting itself creates an obligation to pay. It creates a shi'abud. It creates a real debt. So what you do is, but when you write this document, this shtar, you're actually creating a real debt that exists right now. Or you can make it come into effect. You said this debt will come into effect later on, just before I die. But what do? The way it's written was written is as follows. The person the father will write, I admit to have received an enormous amount of money, let's say a few $1,000,000 from so-and-so, or from my daughter. I admit to receiving from her a loan of a gigantic amount of money. And I owe her this gigantic amount of money, $5 million, to my daughter. But this whole debt was on condition that if she receives a certain amount of money from the estate, the debt is nullified. So really, we create a debt on a very large sum of money to the people you're interested that they receive part of the estate. Let's say the daughter in those days. On condition, and that debt is nullified on the condition, in the case where she'll receive a chatzi zachar, half of a portion of what every male is getting, or a full portion, equal portion to what every boy is getting. So what happens? How does this work? So that in this case, when I get to Mav-Isrin, so the boys have a choice. Well, there's a debt now of $5 million to the daughter. So they can give $5 million to the daughter, which they will not want to do, because if they do that, there will be nothing left for them, right? But the debt is nullified if they give her an equal portion. Aha. So what will they choose to do? Obviously, it's forcing them to giving what? An equal portion to the daughter out of the estate. And in that case, the debt is nullified. That's what's called ashtar chatzi zachar or ashtar zachar shalem. And that is an artificial way of creating a situation where it doesn't pay the heirs who deserve halachically more to go according to what they officially deserve, because if they